What up, athletes? Welcome back to my channel. Today, I want to answer the question, which country has the most oil per capita? And what does that really mean? So, stay tuned.
Oh, this is my day. I'm ready to take it on, come what may.
Okay, so everyone knows by now that the country with the most proven oil reserves in the world is Venezuela. Alright, so Venezuela is neighbor to Guyana, and Guyana has the most oil per capita. So that is, when you take the amount of proven oil discovered or reserved, and you divide it by the population, Guyana comes out as number one. That is the greatest country with the largest proven oil reserves. And that's because recently, Tullow, a company called Tullow, British company, recently discovered 100 million barrels of oil off the coast of Guyana. So this is the 14th discovery of oil since 2015, when Exxon started making discoveries. Exxon now has 13 oil wells, and we know now that the Liza Destiny, that is the floating FPSO, the floating platform for storage and offloading, has arrived in Guyana at the end of August, and they will begin production on the 1st of March 2020. So the question has arisen, where does Guyana fall in the list of countries that are now oil producing countries? It turns out that Guyana is at number 21 in terms of just quantity of proven oil reserves discovered. Venezuela is number one with 300 billion barrels of oil, and Guyana is now number 21 with about 6 billion barrels of oil. But what makes Guyana the country with the largest oil reserves per capita is that Guyana has only a population of 780,000 people. So when you take 6 billion barrels of oil and you divide it by 780,000, you get 7,700 barrels per person. So with 7,700 barrels per person, Guyana has the most oil per capita in the world. And which is the second country? Which is the number two country? Well, it's not Venezuela, although Venezuela still has the largest proven oil reserves because of their population of 30 million people or so. They don't come out on top when you calculate the per capita reserves. The number two country is the United Arab Emirates. The UAE has 2,900 barrels of oil per person. So this is important to understand. I'm going to give you a list of the countries with the most oil, the top 20 countries, and you can see on that list, there you have Venezuela is number one, Saudi Arabia is number two, Canada is number three, and so on. Number 10 is the United States, and number 20 is Azerbaijan. Guyana would be number 21. So, when you look at the absolute oil reserves, you can see that the deposits of oil are scattered around the world, and most of those deposits are in the Middle East. Most of those deposits are in the Middle East. In the top 20 countries, about 6 of those countries are located in the Middle East. And then you have South America, which has Guyana and Venezuela and Brazil and so on. You have Africa, which now has Ghana and Angola and a few other places. You do have Russia and Asia in general, with places like Kazakhstan, Russia, Azerbaijan, and we know there's some oil production in Europe in places like Norway, deep sea oil in Norway and Scotland. But as you can see, the deposits are, of course, the United States is number 10 and Canada is number 3 or so. So they are deposits in North America, but the deposits are scattered in a way that lets you interpret the geopolitical importance of the countries that possess oil. And that is something I want to examine next. Okay, so now let's talk about the geopolitical significance of being an oil producing country. So, oil is energy, and oil represents portable energy. And for much of the 20th century, that is, after about 1970, the importance of oil became the most significant factor in the development of countries, in development of nations, right? So remember, some of you who were born before 1970, remember the oil shocks, the price shocks. You know, when people had there were long gas lines, people lined up for oil for days, and that led to the United States of America beginning a series of interventions in the Middle East, right? The United States and Europe began to intervene in the Middle East, where we said the majority of the oil reserves are located. And that's because of the significance and the importance of oil for energy. That also led to exploration of other sources of energy for production of things like electricity. So a country's development depends largely on a reliable source of energy. And for most of the 20th century, oil provided that source of energy. It was portable and it was available for countries that had it to drive things like electricity production. So this, of course, led to things, so later exploration or later, this led to diversification in the dependence of oil, right? So the vulnerability of countries that depended solely on oil for energy led to countries like the United States and Japan and Russia and countries in Europe beginning to incorporate other sources of energy for electricity production, sources like hydropower and nuclear power and wind and solar and wave technology for production of energy. But because of the difficulties with each one of these sources of energy, oil still remains the most versatile and the most portable and the most useful source of energy. And because of that, it has maintained or retained its geopolitical importance. In other words, countries that produce oil attract a lot of political attention, particularly from countries that demand a lot of oil, that use a lot of oil, like the United States and like countries in Europe, right? France and Germany and United Kingdom and so on, right? So countries that produce oil or that have oil reserves often become the target and the focus for political activity because of the importance of oil in the 20th century, that is, in driving economies, in providing the major source of energy in the 20th century. And that is one of the factors that will have to be considered now that Guyana is becoming a important oil-producing country. In other words, because we now have the largest oil reserves per capita, Guyana is going to become one of the countries of geopolitical and strategic importance. And like Venezuela, often really receives major attention from the developed world in terms of its economy and its oil reserves, Guyana will become a target and become a focus of a lot of that attention going forward. Right now, for example, the countries that are exploring for oil and that are going to be producing oil in Guyana are countries like the United States and China and France and the UK and so on. So this is important to understand because the geopolitical significance of oil will bring that kind of attention to Guyana. So there you have it, folks. If you want to see more content like this, click like and subscribe. Remember to share this video with friends and family around the world. And if you want to support this channel, you can support us on Patreon and on PayPal. And let me know in the comments below what you think about the greatest country in the world as far as per capita oil reserves. Later!